Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new NVIDIA daily update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over NVIDIA. Let's talk about what is happening to NVIDIA, what we can expect moving forward, and all that good stuff. If you enjoyed, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, etc., well, again, I do share my thoughts with my members every single day as the market is trading, as the market is open. So definitely check that out. That link, of course, is down below. So again, we'd love to have you there for just $3 a month. That's all it is for the first tier, which is all my Tesla updates. And in the first tier, I do also talk about SPY, QQQ, and kind of the broader market like that as well every now and then when there's something worth mentioning. So again, just $3 a month. That's all it is. US, of course. Link is below in the description of the video for the YouTube membership. I'd love to have you there. Second tier, if you're interested, also adds NVIDIA to the pool for just $5 a month. And the third tier for $7 a month adds all other stocks that I mentioned that are worth talking about when I see charts worth sharing with members. Like today I talked about Rocket Lab, for instance. So essentially non-Tesla, non-NVIDIA stocks. And on the weekend, I do chart requests with members on Discord. But jumping into it, NVIDIA closing the day up almost a single percentile on the day, closing pretty much at 182 per share, which compared to the market is, a respectable slight outperformance. So what does this mean moving forward for NVIDIA? Well, like I said, last week, the first thing I mentioned and the main thing I'm watching for is the fact that the weekly on the MACD did, of course, print its first lower high. Now, again, remember, this is a weekly time frame, right? Weeklies take time to play out. They're not always perfect. They're not always going to be exactly, quick. It's not just because last week printed that means this week has to instantly start crashing or something like that. No, of course not. These things take time, right? And for all we know, this could be the time where maybe it's wrong, right? It's not going to be right every single time. Just because it was right in the past, it doesn't mean that it has to be right here. However, it does, in my opinion at least, increase those probabilities. So, we'll of course take it step by step, but the weekly is still showing me slight signs of weakness, mainly because of those lower highs on the MACD. But again, like I said, it's a weekly. These things take time. And just because the weekly is showing that doesn't mean the daily or even the 1 hour time frame still can't have, at least for now, bullish momentum and some bullishness still to play with before the weekly, since it's slow, finally kind of sets in and this potential bearishness that's showing up here with the lower highs in the MACD. Again, compared to the previous times, check out my last week's videos if you haven't for comparisons. It'll take time. So while that's still sort of, festering, if you will, we'll continue playing the daily chart, right? What is the daily chart telling us? And is the daily chart still showing us any signs of bullish momentum? Well, essentially, it's still neutral to slightly maybe bullish leaning. It's very, very mixed here, honestly, mainly because, well, okay, we're still holding 179 to 180. That's bullish. We're still barely hanging on to the 9 exponential moving average sitting at 181. We're at 182. I mean, we're still there. We're still holding. We haven't lost it. Technically bullish. However, we're still getting rejected by this sort of 183 to 184 region. We got pretty much right to 183 this high at today's high, and we got rejected again. We need to break above that. Bulls need to get above this range and go higher. If they cannot do that, this will start having problems. So bulls really need to start breaking above these highs up here. They really need to start controlling this area and essentially turning it back into support, right? They want to do what this was doing right here. You can see constant rejection at this sort of 179 to 180 region. And then what did it do? Once we finally broke above it and gapped above it, now we're turning this region that was a resistance, well, now for about a week and a half of trading days into support. They want to do the same thing up here, essentially, right? That's pretty much what needs to happen. If that can happen, we have more bullish continuation on the daily time frame. But until that can happen, I only give the bulls a slight upper hand here, mainly because the MACD is not cooperating. For instance, today we're up almost 1%, right? Looking pretty decent in my opinion. However, the MACD, obviously on the weekly, we already know it's not cooperating. It's starting to make lower highs. The daily is doing the same thing. The daily, again, you have to remember the stock is pretty overextended, but the daily, it's continuing to make lower lows every single day. Even today, a day that we're up 1%, it's still making a pretty decent, I would even argue, lower low. So this to me is a bit of a divergence, right? Price is going higher, but the MACD is continuing to just go straight down essentially. That is not something I like to see. That doesn't give me as much confidence, right? That is one of those factors when I look at it, despite if I looked only at the price and only at the EMAs, I'd be like, yeah, okay, as long as 179, 180 holds, yeah, the bulls are still in control. And in my opinion, that is still technically true. But with the MACD showing these kind of signals, it makes me less inclined to be as bullish as I would normally be. I would like to see the MACD to really start making me bullish, and that's probably going to happen if we break above this sort of 183 to 184. I want to see the MACD at least start making higher lows. If I can see the MACD start making higher lows, that would make me think otherwise, right? Then I'll be like, okay, it seems like the bulls are really coming in to really try to get that one final push into earnings. which is still a possibility, especially as long as 179 to 180 holds. But there's no real clear direction, very, at least short term, very visibly. I mean, for obvious reasons, right? The stock has been pretty much stuck in this exact same range for like what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trading days now. And even up here, technically, it was not that far away from price. If you count these days, which was pretty close to where we are now, you know, we are still pretty much stuck within this sort of similar range for a while now, right? And the stock does not have any real direction overall, because it's not really sure where it wants to go overall, right? Every time it comes down here, the bull step in. Every time it comes up here, the bear step in. And it's just not letting, the stock is not being let actually go anywhere. So until we actually get a stronger, clear direction, which in this case is just going to be a break above or a break below, there's no real way to truly tell which way is actually going to be next. Again, if I had to absolutely pick, at least short term, you know, I'll give the bulls a slight upper hand, only because the 9 exponential moving average is bullish, and only because the actual EMAs are still overall bullish. But like, it's not enough for me to be like ridiculously bullish, if that makes sense, right? I'm just slightly bullish. There could be potential here, and this is definitely not something I'm shorting. Absolutely not, right? I'm not bearish, but I'm not like overwhelmingly bullish. I'm slightly bullish. There is potential. It could absolutely break higher. But I need to see that, right? We need to start seeing something happen on the stock sooner than later, or else, you know, people are just getting chopped up here, right? People are getting chopped up here, left and right, stopped out, right? A lot of stops probably getting hit for bears and bulls. So we need to see a more clear direction. So let's go to the 1 hour. Let's see if that's giving us any signs, right? Well, the 1 hour, if we take a look, like I mentioned before, can be printing a, you know, admittedly pretty ugly looking bull flag, but a bull flag nonetheless that looks something like this, right? And, you know, you can absolutely make an argument that we did actually kind of break out today, which is why, like I said, if I had to absolutely pick, I would lean slightly bullish, because this technically could look like a bit of a bull flag breakout, right? And it has those vibes, if you will. So let's continue monitoring that. But even with this bull flag potential breakout, again, it's a pretty ugly looking bull flag. It's not a very sexy one, but nonetheless still has the properties of it. I still really want to see, at least on the 1 hour time frame, this range that's continuing to be a resistance. I really want to see this turn into a support. I want to see bulls break above, but more importantly, I want to see them break above and hold above, because we want to avoid a false breakout, a trap, a bull trap, right? We don't want to get a breakout, then just to get sucked back under, get a liquidity sweep, and then obviously make our way down, usually pretty aggressively if it ends up actually being a liquidity sweep. We want to avoid those things, right? Which is why, like I said, you want to get a breakout above this key level of resistance. And, well, again, pretty important, you want to see it hold. You want to see buyers start stepping in, because if that happens, that'll give you more confidence that the buyers are stepping in, that we are turning that area into support from now currently resistance. And it's a bit easier to get a nice looking stop loss, because you'll have areas here based on what the candles and the wicks are showing to have a pretty clear area to add some level of a good, nice, tight stop, so that you avoid being potentially liquidity for, you know, a potential reversal. So it just becomes like an easier situation to deal with, right? And that's the way I look at it. And as of right now, well, the stock isn't ultimately actually truly doing anything, which is something we want to watch out for. And when I say liquidity sweep, I kind of mean what this right here was, right? So we kind of did the exact same thing here. We broke these lows. You know, we were getting pretty close to, you know, getting some bearish validation right here, but you can see it ended up just being wicks, right? We ended up just liquidity sweeping this low down here. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of bears got trapped here, and then they got used as liquidity for this push back up, which is a good sign for bulls, which is another reason why, like I said, if I had to pick a direction, I do still lean slightly bullish. Because of these kind of situations, you have a liquidity sweep down here from last week, and we have a potential breakout over here as well. But the final nail in the coffin, at least for now, is a break above 183 to 184, hold, and then essentially move higher. So let's continue monitoring that. Let's continue, you know, making sure that that actually can occur. And the final thing, of course, is the SMH, which did print a very bearish looking candle last week, which last time it printed something that looked like this was all the way up here. So let's see if that actually amounts to anything. So this is something else to watch for potentially on this time frame over here, whether it, you know, develops into something bearish, right? You can see we had one over here. Now it's not perfect. For instance, we had one here as well, which ended up being a false flag. So take it as you will. Is it going to be a false flag like this one right here that I just showed you up here, or is it going to be like these two instances back here, which did actually lead to some pretty significant downturns? Let's see, right? We'll see. But all in all, that's my analysis. That's what I got for you. Thank you so much for watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.